Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Tansey with the SunSpec Alliance. And so we have a full agenda today, and we're going to be working this event workshop style. So this is intended to be a roll up your sleeves and a hand-on event. So we'll start just with kicking off the program with an overview of what is Orange Button and how does it relate to the other industry standards that exist in the industry. And so I'll be joined by Matthias Heinze and Michelle Savage, who are two of our collaborators on the Orange Button program. Following that, Dylan Tansey will take us through the current status in terms of software developers. So we have really a great set of developers that have come on board, over 60 of them. And so he'll take you through what their priorities are and how we're bringing them on board. Followed up with that, we'll take a look at the Orange Button APIs themselves and the taxonomies. And so that session will be led by Michelle Savage and with backup from Raymond Kaiser. And so I should actually say APIs and taxonomy. So we'll probably spend more time focused in on the actual taxonomy. How you get to it certainly is an important aspect, but the main point of any API is to find the data that you can get to. And so that'll take us up until about the 10:30 hour, and then Raymond Kaiser of Amzer Technologies will be doing a demonstration of Orange Button and how it works inside the Salesforce application. And so for that, we've chosen as our example app a surety application form, and actually it's part of a complete application that's robust. We have a piece of it here. So the idea was really to demonstrate that we can adopt Orange Button today into the Salesforce platform, exchange data with that platform today, and use this as an example of what is to come here in the coming months as we roll out the Orange Buttons 1.0. So I should also mention that we are fairly early in this effort. So Orange Buttons has been going for about 18 months, and we started with really a campaign to enlist the industry to give us requirements, and we interacted with about 500 people throughout the course of about a 9-month period of time. And so those 500 people, representing several hundred companies, were able to provide us source requirements that we've then been able to evaluate versus existing industry standard and build the Orange Button taxonomy. So Orange Button taxonomy is actually an amalgam that takes from prior industry standards and codifies how to use the data that's defined in these other international standards. So that's what you hear from Raymond and Michelle at 10 o'clock. At 10:30, Raymond will do the demonstration, and then we'll have the workshop portion. And this will be a round-robin discussion here about discussing what we've seen so far, how well it meets the needs of the industry, and specifically how it meets the needs of Wells Fargo in this case. Because you know, a lot of these players that are providing data are doing so, of course, not a lot of them, all of them, are doing it in support of financing solar assets. And so try to understand what the financial industry is represented by Wells Fargo believes of our approach. You know, are we approaching the bank in a way that's tractable for you? You know, are we adhering to the norms that you're looking for? Are we going to be able to put up the security systems around these types of data services that will make it comfortable for everybody to use these types of standards? And then that'll take us up to the midday for lunch, and then the second half of the day will start from there. So that's the kickoff and the intro for our day. So let's start off with a description of Orange Button itself. And so why does it exist? So Orange Button was funded by the Department of Energy and by industry. Actually, a total of about $8 million has gone into this effort. $4 million in federal funds and $4 million in in-kind contributions from industry to put together data standards to attack the soft cost problem. So if you look at the cost of renewable energy today, and here we're focusing on solar, but I think you can make a similar statement about wind and other sectors, is that most of the cost has been wrung out of the hardware and the manufacturing and a lot of the construction and so forth. But what really has remained sort of untouchable in terms of driving down costs has been the financial component. So the so-called soft costs. And so when you look at soft costs in solar finance, what that really boils down to is lack of data reuse. In other words, the process of financing a solar project is complex, covers many stages from feasibility. So you have to go through the entire, the loan application. You have to do the engineering process. You have to work on interconnection permits. Ultimately, you need to get into construction. You need to manage construction appropriately, working with the utilities and those engineers, as I said. And it goes on from there. At each stage along the way, data is collected. Today, data is collected multiple times, again and again and again. So even though you may have captured many of the key figures of merit in the feasibility stage, oftentimes those figures of merit aren't carried on to the next stage. What that ends up resulting in is inefficiencies in terms of data entry, inaccuracy, lack of transparency, and so forth. So what the orange button seeks to do is to maximize data reuse and to attack this problem that we see in the marketplace, which is the very high soft cost associated with solar finance. And so you can see the cost of data exchange and the inefficiencies around financing represents maybe as much as half of the total cost of the system. So it's clearly a key challenge for the industry to get this right. All right, so I mentioned that this is a 2-year program, and we're about 18 months into it. In the early stages, we went through requirements gathering, and we've developed use cases covering at least these 5 areas: finance, design, deployment, integration, and operating and maintaining systems. That's resulted in a series of marketing requirements documents and product requirements documents. In other words, we've described how we will address the market needs that have been laid out. In each one of these cases, there was at least between 5 to 10 use cases that were identified for each, and out of that we prioritized the top 2 or 3 use cases from each area to focus in on. And by providing the type of focus, it allows us to do a more thorough job of defining a taxonomy. So when we dive into a use case, we really go down to the very last detail of what forms or contracts are exchanged and what are the key figures of merit and so forth. And so all those things go into the orange button taxonomy. So later on today, Michelle will provide you with an overview of how to navigate that taxonomy, and you be the judge. Have we captured those items that are required? So along with the taxonomy, we've also developed a set of APIs. So the orange button API set is comprised of at least 2 main components. There is a web services, a generic web services API that's used for doing application-to-application data interchange. So if you have a design tool, a feasibility tool that needs to feed into a construction management tool or an operational tool, that API focuses on those types of use cases. The other API that we offer is the XBRL API. So XBRL US, which is one of the main partners in the orange button, have standardized the taxonomy for the US GAAP and for SEC financial reporting. And so, the APIs are broken down into 2 main categories, one for reporting and one for application-to-application data interchange. And so Michelle will be able to provide you with an overview on that. Collectively, those 2 elements are known as the orange button API. Finally, we're building a test framework. So you have the data elements that you wish to interchange. You have a couple different methods to exchange data that's encoded in this method. So now how do you validate application compliance? Certainly one way is through simply interoperability testing from application to application, a round-robin fashion. The old-fashioned way, basically brute force. In addition to that, we're providing a tool that includes a golden master, so in other words, a known good implementation, as well as protocol testing that is paired along with that, so that an application is developed, it can be run against this test rig to see if it complies to the basic structure and usage of the API. So that's really done as a sort of a precursor mechanism, so that once we get into, hey Charlie,
Hey,
once we get into the round robin testing app to app, you have a much higher degree of confidence that you're going to be successful in making applications work. And so that's the work of the taxonomy and data standards. And so this is the area that SunSpec is in charge of managing. So I didn't mention, but I should, that this is a multi-party project. So the Solar Energy Power Associations helped us a lot with the requirements gathering. We participated in that as well. And on the back end, where we see here, where with regard to adoption and tools, we have two other development partners working with us. One is KWH Analytics, company based here in San Francisco, and they operate effectively an actuarial database for solar assets. It supports the orange button. And the other adoption partner is NREL. So NREL is also providing reference implementations that utilize these orange button standards. So that is the orange button in its entirety. And where we stand today is that we've just recently finished our public review. That concluded on October 13th. And we're incorporating those comments. We received 100 some odd comments. Every comment will be addressed, and that will either manifest itself in changes to the Orange Button Taxonomy 1.0, or will be noted as something that is a roadmap item. So this is it's going to be a process, and like any standard, it's going to require annual updating as we cover more and more use cases. So it doesn't do everything, but it does a lot of things, and so you'll get to see more of that as we get into the details. Okay.
I'll wrap that up for the intro.
Sounds good.